Welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast, where we're working to help you call a truce with your anxiety. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here's your host, Elizabeth Cush, LCPC.
Welcome back to the Woman Worriers podcast. Thanks once again for tuning in this week. If you're interested in seeing more about Woman Worriers, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Woman Worriers. Today, our guest is Charlotte Hiler Easley, who is a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in Lexington, Kentucky. Her passion is working with women, especially women of the church, who are struggling with knowing their worth, healing from relationship trauma, and identifying their unique place and beauty in this broken world. She helps women find their voice, their passion, and their purpose through an eclectic practice, including experiential therapies such as EMDR, brain spotting, and equine-assisted psychotherapy and learning. She is a certified EAGALA practitioner, a PATH equine specialist in mental health and learning, and a certified EAEMDR practitioner, equine-assisted EMDR. Charlotte's workshop, retreats, and equine work is featured through her account on Instagram, A Woman's Life Equine. Her horse work is done in relational groups that focus on partnership with the horse and the herd, teaching leadership, relationship skills, and personal growth. She is a past recipient of the Innovative Programming Award by the Kentucky Association of Sexual Assault Programming for her work in developing EAST, E-A-S-T-T, an equine-assisted program for survivors of sexual trauma. She describes herself as a Christian Southern feminist, a wife, a mom, a sister, a daughter, an aunt, and a granddaughter. With offices located at the Kentucky Horse Park and in Versailles, Kentucky, you can find her at charlotteeasley.com or at Woman's Equine Life on Instagram. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Charlotte about equine-assisted therapy. Hi, Charlotte, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, I'm tickled to be here talking about this fun stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, if you could just tell the audience a little bit about you and how you got into this work with horses and therapy.
Okay, so I was a stay-at-home mom. It's not a real exciting story, but it's a good story.
Yeah.
I was a stay-at-home mom, and when our children graduated, I just knew there was something else for me to do with my life, and I've always loved working with women. I have been with women's groups. I've led all kinds of groups and mentored people, and I just really didn't know if that was part of my future, but I ended up back in school, and it turned out to be the place that was just really fulfilling for me. And I think that women, I just appreciate always how beautiful and rich our stories are, but I also believe that we could get so lost in other people's stories.
So true.
And we weren't making room for our own. So, and, just all that stuff about expectation and what people want from us, and what we forget even what it is we need, not even what we want. We have a hard time getting to that.
Yeah.
So, and I grew up in the South. I was a good girl, and We had all those unspoken rules about don't get angry, don't take care of others first, all those good little gender roles. And, if you were assertive, you're sort of were talked about as something, that word that starts with a B.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing for me in all of this, as I was going back to school and learning more about myself and why I was the way I was, I think that story about don't be too emotional kept coming up. And then I thought about, well, that isn't true when I'm in the barn. I can be, whatever I'm feeling is what I feel, and it's acceptable there. It may not be with the humans, but it is with the horses, because they're listening and they're being present with that, not taking away my voice in that, right?
Yeah.
So as I was in school, I got to do some wonderful work at the Ampersand Sexual Violence Resource Center as a therapist, and then later as a therapist, but on crisis calls, and learned a whole lot about the world that I wasn't really awakened to at that time, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I'd lived in such a bubble, but I knew things were out there, but this was like, oh my gosh.
Right. It really hadn't touched you personally, your world personally. Yeah.
And sort of meeting yourself coming and going to the emergency room at 3:00 in the morning to sit and just create that sacred space for them to know they weren't alone. And after that experience, my next internship was here at this therapeutic riding center. And my program director just basically said, here you go, do what you want, run it by me, I'll give you suggestions. And I ran with it.
Wow.
And out of that came the EAST program, the Equine Assisted Survivors of Trauma group, which we've been doing for the last 8 years. And, we just, it's a powerful group of women. It's sort of that sacred circle again about community when we're all shamed up and we don't feel like we're worthy of community, to be able to come in and have community, not only with other survivors, but with horses who aren't judging or thinking that it was our fault, or all those things that come with sexual trauma. So anyway, I went into private practice 3.5 years ago, and my office is in the barn right now.
Wow.
I do traditional therapies as well as the equine piece. And the equine piece has really evolved more into groups and retreats, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, I was able to participate in one of your little mini retreats up here in Maryland with Laura Reagan, and it was an awesome experience. I really thoroughly enjoyed being with the horses.
Yeah, and so I'm going to just share, I just recall at our first circle, and sort of we had set up the boundaries for the horses to learn to feel safe with us, as well as us feel safe with the horses. And you were sitting on the end, as I recall, right next to the horses, and got a visit.
I did. It was like we're all sharing, and all of a sudden here, I think his name was Clyde, came right up next to me and nuzzled me, and it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So they have that ability to support us even before we know we need support, right?
Right. Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about why that is. How come horses can be so effective? What is it about the horses that makes this process so, crazy?
They're just, there's people say, oh, it's like, we talk about dogs, therapy dogs, which I also have a therapy dog, but
nice.
We talk about horses, and they're so very different because dogs are working out of a pack behavior. and horses are working out of a herd behavior. So horses have to be totally attuned to their environment in order for them to be safe. And that's just how they've evolved from the beginning of time, is that they must tell the difference between something that is stalking them versus something that is coming into their environment just to be in their environment and leave. So they have developed these finely attuned senses to what's going on with the other horses in their herd. If one horse looks up and sees something, then if he tenses, then they're all going to go, oh, someone's tense and we need to be aware. And they're all going to orient toward that until they decide if it's safe or not. But unlike humans, they will assess and then go back to doing whatever they've been doing, whether that's eating, playing, or sleeping. They will go right back and continue just with their lives. They're so present in the moment. But there's, and for humans, what do? Especially, we just want to hang on to that. Well, I thought it was something that was going to bother me, but it didn't come near. So I know I was safe, but why do I still feel so upset? How dare they come into my environment, and we want to ruminate on that episode instead of being like the horses and letting it go, which is one of the most wonderful things that they can teach us. Also, the horses aren't, they don't have the ability to plan in the future, and they're not really ruminating over the past. So there's just this wonderful sense of being in the moment with them.
Yeah.
And they understand what it takes to just communicate to us by simply just walking in. If we walk in, first of all, they can invite us into the herd. We are so let me back up just a second. So one of the things I think that really is important for us, and especially for, certainly in my life, I am appropriate for this podcast, right? As a woman warrior.
There you go.
When I lose my intentionality and I get caught in my head and I'm overthinking all these things, right? Yep. I can walk into the barn, and when I walk into the barn to get a horse or into a paddock to get a horse, if I am feeling this incongruence, they are very aware of that. And some horses will be very curious about why I am all up in my head and not present, looking forward to coming out and being in a relationship with them, especially when they know me. Or they will be of the other kind where they're just going to stand off and they're going to be like, I don't think you're safe because I don't think you know you're safe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that attunement was the thing that I feel like just struck me there at like the horse's attunement to the groups, and each individual's, like where they were. Because I think there were definitely, and there probably are in your groups, that some of the women were a little less comfortable with being around horses and some were more comfortable. And I think the horses, one, honored that. They weren't pushing those who were uncomfortable to like, come on and play with me. They were just ready to just be there however that person needed them to be there.
Well, I always tell the people that come that have a lot of horse experience, you have to forget everything you've ever known.
Oh, wow. Wow.
We're going to be relational here in a way that's probably a little bit different if you're a competitor. And that's not for all horse people, obviously, but for a lot of them, it's about getting the list checked off or getting the performance better or getting, it's asking things instead of just sitting with things. And so, I think the powerful thing is the horses just allow whatever emotional expression we are aware of or unaware of. And they just ask us to respond to the relationship is in what's going on for me and what's going on for you. If you're not approaching me, what could be the reason? If I walk up to you and you walk away, instead of judging myself harshly about, oh, well, he doesn't like me. Obviously, nobody likes me. I think I'll eat green worms and die. Just that horrible track of thinking that we get on. Yeah. We just if we get curious about, wonder why he's going over there, then we can check in with ourselves and say, I wonder if there's something in me that I'm feeling. And what is that feeling? And what about my body and my brain may not be really congruent right now?
Yeah. So it really, they kind of help us through their own, either connecting or not, like with us, to help us tune into what's happening for ourselves.
Yes. And it's not anything you can script, right? Because I've been in group where someone has started sharing and sort of that mask has come off, and the whole group is starting to feel this authentic connection. And someone may start sharing something that's very painful. I've seen horses really push past people, chairs, whatever they need to do to get into this sort of sacred circle to support that one person. And so we don't always know why that is, and some horses are more likely to do that than others, but they won't connect with anyone around them. They're connected with that one person who is needing that support at that period of time.
Wow.
And it's a very powerful experience. Most of my clients will come because they've lost their power, or they feel like they've lost their voice, or their ability to believe in themselves because they're going through some kind of change, right? Some kind of, like Brennan Manning calls it, your second journey, when the stuff from the morning no longer fits the afternoon program. We're sort of looking about, what do I need to change because things aren't working? So, teach me. So the best teacher is to walk into the paddock for me and my equine professional to step out of your way and let you figure it out for yourself with this herd of horses or one-on-one with a horse. Because really we have the answers in ourselves. Now, sometimes there's skill building that needs to go on with that. And of course, we're always watching to make sure everybody's safe emotionally and physically. But there's so much that happens just in that space where people don't feel judged, where they're able to try things in real time with this animal who is supporting them or challenging them. And, sometimes we hate challenge, but really when that happens, lots of times we are learning something really solid about ourselves.
Yeah, so true. Well, it's interesting, as you were talking, I was remembering, I think we did an exercise. I looked through my little notebook that I had written in the journal you gave us at the retreat about a year ago, I guess, or maybe a little bit more. But so I was just looking through, sort of refreshing my memory about what that was like. And I remember we did an exercise where we talked about when we knew, when we were sort of in tune and feeling whole and safe, and when we weren't. And one of the things I had written down for when I knew I wasn't feeling truly connected to myself is when I lost my ability to find humor, to laugh, to be happy. And I remember this just connected with me at one point where I'm standing in the arena with the horse, and Clyde was there, and he walked up to me and just nudged me with his come on. Where's the humor? Let's get out here with me. And that it's funny that, I just.
Yeah, he, as I remember, I think he actually pushed you.
He did. In his head. He pushed head to head, boom, come on. And showed his teeth a little bit, look at me.
Yeah. Kind of that silly horse, that silly kind of face. Yeah. And I think, one of the things with with anxiety, right, is that we're always overthinking things. We're always trying to
plan and think it through. What are going to be the problems that I can solve before I get there?
Right. What am I in control of? And shame on them for not letting me control them and all of that. So, we forget to play. Mm-hmm. And the playing is one of the things that just frees us.
Yeah.
And we forget to laugh, and we forget to just have that whole big belly, laugh till you cry, right?
Right.
And just enjoying being in the space. Horses do that because they're silly. Lots of times when they're playing, I mean, you're just laughing at, look at that goober, just look at all of the things that are going on. So we do a lot of mindfulness practice when we're working with the horses about taking, being just in that moment, noticing what's coming up for me, especially when they're playing. Sometimes that can be rough and that can feel confrontational. Mm-hmm. And so we can sit with that a little bit. What does that mean? Are they being assertive? Are they being confrontational? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, it's just about being assertive, that they're just moving somebody around or playing, Mm-hmm. They're nipping and raising up on their back legs. They're playing. Right. So I think that's a great reminder for us to sort of stop thinking about, I wonder when I go in there what's going to happen, mm-hmm. versus, oh, look what they're doing. And then sort of bringing that mindfulness when we open the gate and walk into the arena.
Yeah. And as you said, I think maybe earlier, but I know you said this before because you've talked about it, is that, the horses are like the perfect mindfulness animal. Like they are in the present moment all the time.
They do. Yeah. They really have to be.
Yeah.
And there is such great learning in that. And, we worry so much about what others think about us and what we're presenting. And horses don't care what kind of clothes we have on. Right. They don't care what our bank account is or how many letters we have after our name. All they're really anticipating when we walk in and invite them to be in relationship with is what we are bringing at that particular moment. Mm. So, and I think that's hard for us because we're so used to others expecting things from us expecting things of ourselves. Right?
Yeah. Well, and two, the expectation, but the judgment and and expecting to be judged.
Yes.
Where that, the horses are just there.
Right.
With us.
And I think relationally, horses are just a great learning ground for improving and building relationships. Mm. Simply, they don't have a game plan for how this is going to go back to the expectation. They aren't trying to overtly control us when and they're not going to respond to us trying to control them. We're going to run into, if we're trying to lead them someplace they aren't real sure they want to go, then there's going to be a little bit of conflict in there that needs to be resolved about how are you doing this? What's your body language like? And it's the same with our human relationships, right? If I'm trying to get you to go to someplace that you're not real interested in because you have another plan, then I don't just come up to you and say, well, I don't care, you're going with me.
Right.
That doesn't always get the response we want.
No.
But if we go and we say, this is really important to me, and your body language, you can just feel it soften. Right?
Yeah.
And then as it softens, you're more in relationship with this other person. They're beginning to feel that you have a need and you've made an ask of them. And then they get to negotiate their response with you. And horses, it's the same way, and it's a real-time practice field.
Yeah. Tuning into yourself and what you're bringing to whatever this is. Yes, if I want to be in relationship to you, how am I in relationship to myself too?
Well, it is. And I think we can all, we talk a lot in the horse work about the different body languages between, say, fear and awe, right?
Yeah.
Just we practice feeling what constricted feels like and what are the emotions, giving those emotions names. So that we can recognize them for ourselves and move them sort of out of that felt sense into a place where we can be intentional about them and be curious about them. And then we practice awe. Like the other night when we were turning out after our East group, there was just the sunset that was just unbelievable. And I was so thankful that the women we stopped the horses and we said, just look. And then how do you feel? As opposed to when you walked in today. Where are you feeling that? And can you describe it? Does it have words with it? As long as we're being that curious and looking and trying to seek out what it is that we're feeling and what's going on in the moment, then there's all that self-judgment, those expectations, all of those sort of fade into the background.
Yeah. And that sense of awe can just really, just fill you up.
Oh, it does. It is. And I think that's what most people would say. It's an opening and filling experience.
Yeah.
So,
very cool.
It is. They have there's an awful lot that we can learn from them. And just the environment, I think, sometimes is too. Because, when we were at the retreat in Maryland, just walking onto the farm, being under that beautiful big willow tree that we sat under, we were just in the horse environment.
Yeah.
And it has so much going on, but then you can be there and still be focused on what your intention is, and creating connection with others and with the horses.
Yeah. So for people who may not really understand the equine assisted therapy, like you don't need to have experience like riding horses or being a horse person, right?
None at all.
Yeah.
And most of the people don't have horse experience. Or what we get a lot of is, I used to ride when I was very young. Or I've been on a pony once and it wasn't a good experience.
Yeah.
The environment that we as therapists and coaches present is one that we want you to be able to feel safe, right? Because that's the basis of being able to be courageous. If I feel like I can step into this unknown place and just practice doing that with someone who feels safe for me to be doing that with, then I can try it and I can exercise that muscle of taking chances, of doing new things. And so I work with a partner, always work with a partner, and that person is an equine professional. Right now I've got 2 gals that I work with that I just adore. And our particular group of horses are always worked with. We know what's going on with them, just like we know what's going on with our clients, right? We know if they need some rest. We know if they need some medical treatment. They come up, they work, and then they're ready to meet our groups, just like we prepare the people that are coming to us for being in the group and talking a little bit about what the experience is, so that no one's getting thrown under the bus, like walk in and, okay, now go out there and get a horse.
Right. You're easing them into what this is going to be like, and familiarizing them with how it all goes.
And so I think for the therapist, we're creating the same therapeutic relationship that we would in the office. And we're setting up good boundaries. We're talking about the experience. But one of the things that is a little bit different is that the therapist is more decentered. The therapist is there to support the work, but the biggest work comes between the woman and the horse. Again, in my case, women, because that's what I work with.
Yeah.
It comes between it comes in the relationship that they build.
Yeah.
And what that looks like for them and what they're taking away. So it's very powerful in that way. So that, I see them an hour a week. I create the space for them. The horse supports them in that space.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So if people wanted to know more about equine assisted therapy, how would they find out more about that?
Well, as opposed to when I started doing this, a ton of information online. And I think that one of the things is always looking, just like you would look for your therapist, for people who are certified and who really have practiced the work, so that you are in an environment that, and for me and for you, right, that's about being trauma informed.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the things that makes ours work a little bit, my horse work a little bit different. Now there's quite a few people who are pursuing trauma-informed certifications and things like that. Yeah. There are certification programs for people. Natural Lifemanship is a great one. EGALA is probably the largest mental health model that a lot of people are practicing. And PATH International, which is Professional Association Therapeutic Horsemanship. All of these are international organizations. And all of them certify for either equine professionals or therapists. There's a ton of other programs that are out there. The Herd Institute. I love Veronica Lack's work that she does. And some of these people, I know Veronica offers retreats. Because I'm not doing certification work, I am offering more retreats and workshops. And so those look like horses and yoga.
Yeah.
Minis, mothers and daughters. Sometimes they're just about getting out here and playing. And I think that's the biggest thing, is we just need to take off that heavy cloak of anxiety and caring for others and ignoring our own time sometimes, and just come play.
Yeah. So I saw that you might potentially be having some upcoming retreats. Is there something happening in your world that you'd like the audience to know about?
Well, if you're local, of course, and local being Lexington, Kentucky, you can get online and all of that information is there. My horse work is featured under A Woman's Life Equine. And we are planning some retreat. We have a self-care retreat coming up for trauma therapists specifically.
Wow.
It will be about self-care, will be about creating intentionality and goals around the work that we do, and really about making some space just about the work, right?
Yeah.
To sort of take that time to be creative, to play, and to reflect. The Authentic Self workshops that we were talking about, we had one here in October that's with the lovely Laura Reagan's Daring Way. And we had a wonderful one here in Kentucky. You came to the one in Maryland. We are talking about that. We don't have anything on the books. It won't be this year. So, but we're hoping to do it. And we're getting a lot of calls about that. So,
oh, cool. Well, I hope you guys do that again.
Attend to. And I think one of the other things that I'm doing is working on a perfectionism workshop.
Wow. That would be amazing.
Yeah, because a lot of my clients deal with that. So
yes, mine too. Yeah, that is definitely a theme through the whole anxiousness, I think, of that, that underlies a lot of anxious behaviors. It's neat to feel like you have to be doing everything just right.
And I think the horses challenge that immediately.
Yeah.
They aren't going along with that program.
So how do people find you? You said a woman's equine life, or life. Yeah.
A Woman's Life Equine.
Sorry.
No. And at charlotteeasley.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Charlotte, thank you so much. It was so fun to talk to you today, and just great for me to reminisce on how wonderful that retreat was as well.
Biz, I thank you for allowing me to share, because this work is powerful, and I know that it changes lives, just like any therapy experience. But the experiential nature of this really helps us realize what it's like with being in relationships with ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Thanks again, Charlotte.
Okay. Bye, Biz.
Thanks again for joining us for this week's episode of the Woman Worriers podcast with Charlotte Easley. I just love Charlotte. She is such a good soul, and I really enjoyed reminiscing about my experience with the retreat, but also hearing her talk about the work with horses and how powerful and empowering it can be. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I ask that you do. It helps me reach more people, the more subscribers and the more authentic, true reviews that I have. So if you feel inspired, please subscribe. Please write an honest review. I would truly appreciate it. If you have ideas or suggestions about the podcast, something that you would like me to talk about that feels relevant to you that I have not talked about yet, please reach out. You can reach out through womanworriers.com or progressioncounseling.com. Click the Contact Me link and shoot me an email. Are you looking for other podcasts to check out? Try Unapologetically Sensitive with Patricia Young. In this podcast, Patricia shares how sensitivity weaves itself into your lives. She talks about the richness that it adds and the strengths that sensitive people have because of the sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. If you are a creative, a deep thinker, a deep feeler, a highly sensitive person, an introvert, or identify as INFJ or ENFJ, you may enjoy the in-depth conversations where she talks openly and honestly about how to experience life. I hope all of you have a wonderful week. Ciao for now from this Woman Worrier.
Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Woman Worriers podcast. Music was written and performed by Andy Cush. If you'd like more information on this episode, you can find the show notes, the resources shared today, and links to the guests' profiles at womanworriers.com.